Hello and welcome to Alive That Christian panel on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri, and I am in Germany. And I'm reporting from I was going to say undisclosed location, but I just told you it's Germany. Clearly, I'm jet lagged. Anyway, I really didn't want to miss this one. This is the last one before the last Christian panel. We do these every 2 weeks. This is the last one before the election, as Michelle pointed out. And so I was like, let's do it. I'll land. We'll talk about the election coming up. We'll talk about voting your morals. And we'll have hopefully leave this month on a good note. That's what I would like to do. Yeah. And so without further ado, first of all, Michelle, you look so lovely in your black outfit with your red MAGA hat tonight.
Thank you. I got my hat yesterday. I was pumped about it.
Nice.
It's I just got one last month or the month before. It feels kind of different to have one, doesn't it?
It feels freeing to put it on. First time I've had it. Third time voted for him, but first time I've had the hat. So,
have you worn it in public yet?
I've not, but I plan on wearing it at Halloween when we pass out the candy.
That's your next step.
But you know what? Where I am, I have a feeling most people just be like,
yeah.
It's kind of freeing, like you said, to wear it. Do you get the impression more people are buying and wearing MAGA hats now? I do.
Yes.
Yeah, the merch is flying off the shelves.
Yeah, I think
people aren't as scared.
Yes, and I think especially after like they shot him, it just kind of removed all care for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, my niece wants to borrow it for school. I think I will let her.
Do it. Why not? And then we're also joined by, as always, Brahma Bull from the Bullpen. How are you, Brahma?
Hey, doing good. Yeah, it's going to be a long night of talking politics. I've got this show talking Christian side of politics, and then I'm going on Zach's show afterwards, and we're discussing the U.S. election and how a Canadian can understand what's going on here right now.
Explaining it for a Canadian. That sounds fun. What channel is that on?
Zach's, ZAXX.
Okay, cool.
He's a good guy.
Well, we're going to be joined by Odin from OMBReviews shortly, which is our regular Christian panel. If you like the show, please hit like, subscribe. You can leave a comment to help the algorithm. We do this show every 2 weeks, and we just come together. We're Christians from a variety of backgrounds, and we tackle different cultural events, issues. We review films and movies, and again, jet lag, films are movies, films and books. and we're usually I don't sound as loopy as I do tonight.
It's okay. We understand.
So let's talk about the election. I voted before we got on this plane. It seems like 2 days ago now. My husband and I were getting everything ready to leave, and we did early voting on the first day of early voting. Let's see, that was on Monday where I'm at. And we did that because I don't trust that everything will go smoothly. And on the way back, who knows if the plane's delayed or whatever. And I had a real sense of optimism voting. And I wanted to check in with you guys and see how you're feeling. And then also talk about some of the stuff that we've been seeing online where people are saying they don't feel good about the election. Christians who are saying that they might sit this one out because they don't like the position of either party or either candidate.
Well, when you say how do we feel, do we mean about like who we think is going to win or?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I my sister and I, we went and voted early last week. My grandmothers voted early. My parents are going to go this week, which I just want to recommend. I do recommend voting early. I voted now. Every election I voted in, I voted early. Like, I don't really understand the let's wait to the last day where some emergency could pop up and all of a sudden you can't get there, or the machine goes down that day, or, I think early voting, less lines, just go ahead, get your vote in. So I want to say that first, but then also as far as how do I feel? I'm actually tying it back into Christian, since we are a Christian panel. I got to minister. I got to minister last Friday at this women's event, and I was ministering out of the book of Esther. Of course, the famous line there, for such a time as this. But I was talking and just bringing up in that how throughout the book of Esther, there's 2 times where you see like the like the precision of God's timing, like placing people, boom, like laser like precision to make things unfold. And as I was kind of going over my sermon, I began to think about the day Trump got shot. And what I was speaking on made me think of that, because literally you were a split second away from the man's brains being blown out on a stage. And I just, as a Christian, I really knew in my heart in that moment, that was the Lord. For whatever reason, the Lord preserved that man's life. I mean, had he not just turned even slightly, a fraction of a second later or not, he'd be dead. I mean, that's just the bottom line. He absolutely would be dead. And I really, it was in that moment too, I just kind of had a peace. Maybe that's not why the Lord preserved him, but I have a hard time believing that the 100% God saved him that day. And I have a hard time believing it was just to lose to Kamala Harris, if I'm being real. So that's kind of my thoughts, that I really do believe Trump is going to win. So that's where I am on that. I'll let Brahma go now.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I mean, I do the show on Sunday that is just pure politics. We go over the polls every single Sunday morning. And yeah, I mean, we're basically right back to where we were with Joe Biden, at least in the betting market, which tends to be a little bit more accurate than maybe your polls, because it's people putting their money where their mouth is. He's up like 20-30%. I mean, the poly market numbers right now for the presidential election, he's at 62%, she's at 38%. And in almost every one of the swing states, especially the battleground states that are typically blue or have gone blue, he's leading by 10 or 11 points. Mm-hmm. There is an area where you get beyond the margin of cheat. I mean, we all have the feeling that they're going to try something. We already know from, say, Maricopa County in Arizona saying, well, it's going to be 10 to 13 days before we have results from Maricopa County. We know crazy. They're going to be trying to do something. But I was always a person who did wait until Election Day, because I like the pageantry of Election Day, to go out and vote and get it done on Election Day. This is not an election where we can do that. 2020 showed us that, no, the Republicans kind of have to play by the rules that have been put out there, not by the way we would like it to be. So I think the numbers are backing up that we should have a good night on November 5th, if you're pulling for Trump and for the Republicans, of course. But I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll be doing the live stream, me and you, Keri. So just getting to the kind of Christian side of this, I guess. I think voting is a form of stewardship. Here's what I had written. Voting is a form of stewardship. Politics at its core is the coming together of a society in order to shape the direction of that society. And as Christians, we are subject to political authority on earth. And we must use our stewardship, which would be our vote in this case, to try to aim society more towards godliness. So yes, I think that's what we need to be doing. And that's why I can't really get behind people that are saying they're going to sit it out, because I think that's bad stewardship. That's the parable of the talents. That's the master rebuked the one who just buried the talent and didn't do anything with it.
Will you explain that analogy a little more? Because I agree with you. I kind of, to each his own. And if somebody feels like, I've seen some people saying they're not going to vote for Trump because they don't like his stance on abortion and they don't feel like they have a choice that they agree with that lines up with them morally, like a Christian choice. I understand that, but I agree with you, which is that I do think that's a bad decision. I think you're wasting your opportunity for stewardship and for placing your vote to try and aim culture, as you phrased it, aim culture back towards God, a little more towards God. And so, can you explain what you mean by the parable of the talents?
So the parable of the talents is in Matthew. Basically, a master gives his 3 servants a certain number of talents, which also goes against the whole equity equality thing, because certain of the servants were given more talents. So one was given 5, one was given 2, and one was given 1. And the master comes back later, and the one who was given 5 has doubled it by going out and trading and doing all, being diligent about trying to get return on investment. The one who was given 2 comes back and he's doubled it. The one who was given 1 was scared to do anything with it, so he buried it in the field. And the master was not real happy that he did nothing to use that talent. And where I'm equating it here, and the 2 theologians on the panel can tell me if what they think on it, but it's the stewardship of what you've been given, and that's where I'm equating it to your vote. And the stewardship, we are all under a political authority. We just happen to be lucky enough to be in the democratic authority in the U.S., but we've been given that vote as citizens, so we have to use it.
Well, and here's what I want to say about the whole, because I actually agree with Brahma that I don't really respect Christians just sitting it out, especially over, oh, well, I don't like Trump's abortion stance. First of all, I don't necessarily like, I don't agree with him on abortion. I don't like abortion. I don't agree with abortion. But when it really comes down to it, judge actions more than words. In my lifetime, there's not been a president who did more for the pro-life movement than Donald Trump, regardless of his actual feelings. He just, he was the one that was able to put 3 Supreme Court justices on that overturned Roe v. Wade. And beyond that, I put this in our group chat, and I know it's a bit facetious, but, I put, it would be like if back in ancient Rome, the Christians had the ability to vote out Nero, who was persecuting them, and he was throwing them in the arenas to be slaughtered. And they were like, no, because he won't shut down the arenas and fool. We're just gonna sit this one out. No biggie. We'll just sit it, because we didn't get all of what we want. So we'll just sit this out. And I know that's being facetious, but I think the point I'm trying to get across
is to make a point.
Yes. Like, you just can't really sit this out, because there is, with these, I know Trump is by no means a perfect vessel. The Republican Party is not perfect. There's, tons of things that we can discuss on that. But the scripture does talk about in John an AntiChrist spirit that is in the earth. And if there is a party in this nation that it has a very obvious AntiChrist spirit and agenda that they push, it is absolutely at this moment in time the Democratic Party. And if you sit back and just don't vote, well, then you're allowing that to go into power. And I just don't see that being very wise. And back to what Brahma said about our responsibility, I will say this: the greatest export that the United States of America has had over since we have been around, since our existence as a nation, has been the gospel of Jesus Christ. From the United States of America, we have sent missionaries all around this world to preach the gospel to the poor, as Jesus would say, and to bring that message. And again, going back to that, do not vote for a party. Do not sit back and just not vote when there is a party that actively is very much anti-free speech, which in return is anti-religious freedom. And I just bring that point of our greatest export of, we've got to do whatever we can do to allow the United States to be a place that has religious liberty and religious freedom and freedom of speech, because you can't have one without the other, to where we can keep going and exporting the gospel all around the world, and don't become a place like China that has a government-ran religion. We don't want that. And that's where it's time for Christians to get on vote. Like, I get it. You don't have to like Trump. You're not voting for your pastor, but you are voting for a party that is not antichrist, and that will allow you to continue to express your faith and go on Sunday mornings and worship freely without fear of persecution.
Yeah, if you can't vote for the man, vote for the platform.
Yes.
Hey, Odin.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, Odin.
Howdy. How y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
You?
Doing okay. Wife had to go out to celebrate someone's last day. She has a good friend that's leaving for another state. And so they're having like a go away party. And so I had to take care of the nighttime routine. So that's why I was a little late tonight.
Aw, that's always a good reason.
Oh, yes.
Well, we've got a question up for you. A super chat from J.S. Pena for $4.99 says, I already asked Odin this, but I saw an episode of King of the Hill about a psycho Christian woman saying that Halloween is the devil's holiday. What say you? What say y'all? I guess that's for all of us.
Yeah, and I mentioned on the stream that it's interesting when you look at the history of Halloween and most holidays. In fact, my favorite two to always talk about are Valentine's Day and Halloween, because in both cases you actually have a very strong Catholic Christian foundation. Like in Halloween, it's called Halloween and it's called All Hallows Eve because it's literally the eve of the Feast of All Saints. Like it is the eve of All Saints Day. And so it used to be in the church that we would not only have the days that we would celebrate the feast of the church, so All Saints Day, of course, being a major feast, but also the day before would be typically, interestingly enough, would be a day of fasting in many cases, a day of preparation. Sometimes there would be extended days. And so it was meant to be a preparation for the great feast of All Saints. And so the reason why it's called Halloween, why it's called All Hallows Eve, because it's literally the feast of all that is hollow, all that is holy, the holy saints. And so if anyone's ever wondered where that comes from. And of course, the other is St. Valentine's Day, because it's actually the feast of St. Valentine that's been commercialized into something ridiculous. So it's always my day of like, oh, darn corporatism. Because it's a beautiful day to commemorate a great martyr of the church, who was St. Valentine, who there are several St. Valentines, but the one that typically is associated with Valentine's Day was known for having been killed by the empire of that time because he was marrying Christians against the will of the government. The government said that he did not want, that they did not want any of their soldiers getting married because they found it to be a distraction during the time of war. And he went against that and married them anyway. And so that's where this sense of love comes from. But anyway.
Well, and I'm going to give one. I'm going to give one for Halloween that Odin's not going to appreciate. But for all the Protestants out there, another big event happened in 1517 on October 31st. One monk by the name of Martin Luther nailed 95 theses to a church door, and the rest is history, as we say.
Fun fact about
you didn't tell it like it was a spooky story.
Fun fact about that, the historicity of that event is actually questionable as far as whether he actually nailed 95 theses to the church door. So just putting it out there that, yes, obviously it's the time in which we commemorate his opposition to certain teachings of the church, but the actual hammering, not necessarily an act of history. Just throwing it out there.
I've got a suggestion here from the chat. Humdrum Superior says there's a Christian YouTuber named Inspiring Philosophy who has a great explanation of why Christians can celebrate Halloween and you are not worshiping the devil by dressing up your kids and having fun. My pastor, also at Church on the Square, has a sermon about it. I think it's from last year, but he just shared it since it's topical. What a good question. That's a topical question, too. We're here talking about the election. You're talking about Halloween's coming up, and we haven't even thought about it.
I think that goes to, I mean, Odin brought up like a good, you can turn it to that of you know, that holiday as well. But also I think as far as like me, like as a kid or so many Christians, it goes back to the intent of the heart. Like, you know, most little kids just want to dress up because it's fun and everyone else is doing it and they want candy. And it's really that simple. They're not participating in devil worship. They just want some candy. You know, it's just not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's
It's
just
just
the commercialization of it because, I mean, it's not really any different than gift giving at Christmas. I mean, that's
Yeah.
become more of a commercial thing than what the actual day of Christmas was supposed to be about. So I don't look at it as satanic or evil, although I remember in the 80s when they did.
this is
Going
also
to Christian schools, yeah, there were lots
yeah.
of talks about it.
This is a great point from the chat. Wicked Sykes says it's also a time that neighborhoods visit each other. That's what I love about it in small towns where people just go porch to porch, door to door like the old days. That's great. It's one of the few holidays where that happens.
And there's some who often try to throw out there that like, oh, it was a pagan origin. Well, the only thing that was actually at the same time was in the Celtic, right? So in Ireland, there was the New Year. So it was actually the New Year for them in the pre-Christian times. And so we could say that there was something there technically. But as far as how we oftentimes think about witchcraft and things like that, that was actually a much later. It was basically pagan culture, like the neo-pagan culture, trying to like take back the day. When the reality is that All Hallows Eve, Halloween, the name of it, the aspect of candy, the aspect of dressing up, that actually all stems from the Catholic tradition. Because on typically on the Feast of All Saints, you would actually have kids dressing up as saints. That's where the whole dressing up thing actually comes from.
Didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
yeah.
Oh, learned something new tonight. Well, to get us back to the election talk, when have you voted yet, Odin?
I have not. I'm a bit more traditional. I like to vote on election day personally, if I can.
That's what Brahma was saying.
Yes. So I have voted early before in previous elections, but I also, in general, like to vote on election day.
I in general like to, but I won't be this year. I'm getting it in as early as I can.
I in general like to avoid lines, so I vote early at all times.
Well, Colorado has, I mean, everybody gets a ballot mailed to them. Colorado is a full mailed ballot state. So, I mean, ultimately, to early vote, all we have to do is fill out the ballot and do it in a drop box. So there is no line. That's why I typically go to vote in person. But
that's ridiculous.
We're going to bank everything we can.
And you go vote in person.
That
How do
would
they know?
Be troublesome.
Right? I'm sure people do that.
I'm sure they do, but it's illegal.
That's why I don't feed it to the system.
That matters all that much to a certain
I refuse to play their games. I refuse to give them the satisfaction of, look, all these people are voting early. I'm like, nope, not me. I'm not going to reinforce that system.
See, I think we use the rules that are in force right now. Then we get to change the rules once we are able to take over the government again.
Oh, believe me, it depends on the state.
Get to a national holiday one day.
If we are in a swing state, then that changes it quite a bit. Like I live in Tennessee. So for me, it's like, no, Tennessee, we don't need to be doing this ridiculous nonsense. We don't need to be doing the extra long early voting. But if you're in a swing state where it's very clear that they will use that system to really just collect the ballots, not really collect the votes, you know what? I think that we should absolutely use every single means to fight against that.
Yeah.
So what's your feeling on it then, Odin? Like how it's going to go?
It's hard to say. I mean, because politics and elections are always very, very fickle and very difficult to track. There are so many people that make predictions. There's so many different polls. I think on either side of it, you can try to find some data point to support your argument, right? There are so many polls, for instance, that seem to indicate that it's much more leaning towards the blue side. There's others where, especially when you take into account the historical inaccuracies of those polls, when it comes to a certain orange man being on the ballot, it seems to lean much more in the red direction. But again, it's really going to come down to voting. And that's why no matter what side, and this is where I kind of probably differ from some, because I know the kind of beginning part was talking about whether or not we have to vote or whether or not there is a moral obligation to vote. And from a Catholic perspective, there actually is a duty that we have to vote. Because if we are going to exist as citizens of a country where we have civil authorities, some of the duties that are listed, for instance, are things like we have to obey just laws. That's a very key factor, just laws. Respect public authority, strive for the general welfare according to our ability, and vote in elections to ensure the support of candidates that uphold God's laws. And that's where I would maybe disagree with some, because I think that those, not that are sitting out voting altogether, I do think that there's actually a moral obligation that we have to vote. But I don't think we have a moral obligation to vote for a specific candidate. I think that if anyone's voting, and specifically they are voting for somebody that is supporting the common good, and I think there's definitely arguments to be made about Donald Trump being one of those persons. I also think, though, that in some states, there might be other persons on the ballot where you could argue they have no chance at the presidency, but they are still someone that you can vote for and support. And I think that that's worth it, because getting
Like
more votes
RFK.
at that local level is actually important. So in a solid red state, I would actually rather that happen, only because that's what allows future potential political parties to start to actually have a chance. Is getting a certain level of votes gets you more things down the road, basically. So that's why, for me, there's absolutely a moral obligation to vote. I wouldn't say that there's more obligation to vote for a specific person.
I would agree. The thing I was saying about stewardship is you need to use your vote. You don't have to do it with the person that I'm going to vote for, but you need to use your vote.
Because here's my thing too. If Christians in this nation, Catholic and Protestants, came together and voted as a bloc,
Huge.
we would control the nation. Literally, they would be at our whim of what, like, that would be the biggest voting bloc in the nation. And like, then you can get things done that you want, because the candidates know they have to give in.
Yeah. And
True.
I think that there are some people, and this, another reason why I wanted to bring that up is because there might be some that try to argue saying, how could anyone possibly support, X candidate? And typically when it comes to like Christians, there are a lot of people that do say, how can a Christian vote for Trump because of X, Y, and Z, right? There are certain things in his personal life and certain other things too. His position on abortion, which again, we've kind of mentioned, I'm also not a fan of his position either. But it from a Catholic perspective, this is how we would understand it. So there's different ways that one can cooperate with. And again, when I say evil, I'm not saying that Trump is Satan or that he is like an evil person, but he does support evil. Like, he does support an evil, which is abortion. And so that is a reality. And so there are different types of cooperation with evil. There's a material cooperation and a more formal direct cooperation. And so essentially, we can materially cooperate, saying when the circumstances are necessary, an evil could be morally permissible, right? This remote cooperation, or this material, I should say, cooperation, if a few conditions are met. The voter does not share the candidate's intention. So if one does not share the intention of Trump when it comes to abortion, that would fit that category. That their own action, the voters, is morally good or neutral. Voting itself is a good moral thing. That there's a grave reason for acting. I think there's definitely an argument to be made that the alternative makes it a grave reason for supporting Trump over Kamala. And then that scandal is excluded, meaning that your action will not cause the scandal of a wide portion of people, right? So if someone were to go out of their way to make a very public statement that could scandalize people, like a priest going on the altar saying from the altar, everyone must support Trump, that's scandalous, right? Even if we agree with what's being said, it's not the place of the altar of sacrifice to make a political statement.
Right.
And so that would be that would be an example of a scandalous statement. But in general, we can absolutely morally justify voting for someone like Trump, whereas we cannot do the same for voting for someone like Kamala in the same way. There's not as strong of an argument, morally speaking, at least.
Because back to what we said, you're basically too, in voting for candidates right now, voting for a party. And it's just like the Democratic platform. I mean, good Lord, abortion is like one of the number one things.
It's the only thing she's running on, other than
That's all
I'm
they
not
care
Trump.
about. That's all they care
That's
about.
the only thing that's come out of her mouth this whole time. The only thing that she actually has taken a stance on,
And her supporters.
is abortion.
And that's what drives me crazy too. It's like when
And
people are
her
asked,
VP.
hey, why do you support her? Almost every time, the first two things, it's to be one of these two things. Either one, well, she's not Trump. It's Orange Man Bad related. Orange Man Bad. Or it's abortion. Like those are like, and that's why it honestly is just so disgusting, the altar. Because if we think about sacrifice, altar, the altar by which these people offer sacrifice is the altar that sacrifices children.
Yeah.
And it's just disgusting to see.
Well, and Keri's either frozen or asleep. I think frozen.
Yeah, she froze up.
It's okay. She'll be back in a minute. Well, another evil, abortion is just one of the evils. That's one of the major talking points. And she's back. We got
Keri,
two
got a new
sessions.
Keri.
It was was like, wow.
There's
But
two of me.
abortion is just one of the evils, because I believe as Christians, it is our job to especially, okay, here's what, again, when I say an antichrist spirit that's behind things, look at everything the left is pushing. Look at even what happened when we got what was going behind the scenes at Disney and what they told us they're pushing down your children's throats. They are pushing immorality upon children. And I believe that that is one of the most wicked things any person can do, is to, in fact, I believe scripture talks about that, about basically, what is it? It's better for something to be hung around your neck than to offend one of these little ones.
Yes.
And to go after children's innocence and beyond innocence, what Keri even talked about when you spoke at the Austin school board, or not school board, the whatever it was,
City Council,
of what they are willfully and knowingly doing to children. When I say children, I mean minors, is evil. What they are pushing. And it's it's not even like it's something in the background on their platform. It's like the main thing of their platform is abortion and the transitioning stuff.
Yeah.
The spirit of the Antichrist is how you put it. It's completely upside down now. It's all destruction. It's destruction of children's bodies, of their souls. There's nothing left over in that party. And I was in that party for most of my adult life. There's nothing left over in that party that's about creating anymore that I can see. It's all about destruction.
Yeah.
Lindsay says, I'm not even a Christian. And I recognize how evil the policies are.
They're destructive. And evil is in its very nature. It's not constructive. It's destructive. And just look at our nation. Again, what they've been in power 12 of the last 16 years. And it's just like, look at what they've done in the last 4 even. Yeah. It is a very destructive thing they are pushing upon all of us. And as Christians, you've got to stand up and care about your children, your grandchildren, the next generation. Again, like protect the innocent, basically. And also, that's who they're going after.
Yeah. And also look to the demographics. Like that to me is honestly one of the scariest things about the election is if you look at almost every demographic, almost every single one breaks for Trump, except for one, which is single women.
Single white women.
Single white women. And I think that that's so terrifying because, again, if you were to then dig deeper into those polls and see what is their preeminent issue, again, almost universally, it is abortion. It is a lot of these woke ideologies. And it honestly forces you to dig deeper into it of like, why is this the case? And all you can do is go back to our current education system and how because of this massive push to try to make it so that there's more, quote, equality, right, by trying to bring about a higher degree of women in college and things like that. What has also happened while that good has happened of trying to create the sense of equality, you also now have the push of, okay, what are they learning? What are they being taught? What are they actually being pushed to? And in many cases, it's being pushed to these woke ideologies. It's being pushed to gender studies. It's being pushed to these radical thoughts. And what have you seen now? You've seen they are now the only demographic that has any sense of overwhelming support for one of these candidates, because on almost every issue, one of them wins almost overwhelmingly. And it's only this one demographic on this one specific issue. And it's terrifying. It shows you just the power of the demonic, especially amongst this group.
It's mind warping.
It's a religion.
Yeah.
It is a religion that they're picking up when you mentioned the education in the schools. And I think the more that people look at woke as a competitive worldview and belief system and religion, then they can understand it better, of why it has such a grip on them. And you mentioned single women. One of you theologians is going to be more familiar with this verse than I am, but I'm thinking of that verse, and I think it's in Timothy, about how women will be led astray by, oh gosh, what's the verse? Silly, is it silly? No, from Timothy.
No, I know what you're talking about.
And it says they'll always be reading basically, but never learning.
Never coming to the knowledge that's speaking to everyone, but I know what you're referring to in that section that mentions about, because he even goes into Eve being deceived.
I think
That
so.
part.
Let me see if I can find this verse. But when I first read this, I was like, oh, this sounds like woke ideology. Here it is. Always learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of truth. 2 Timothy 3, 6 and 7. Is that it?
Yes.
Maybe?
Well, that is the always learning but never coming to the knowledge of truth. Yeah, that. But if you're talking specifically about where it addresses women, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's 6. Here it is. It says, they are the kind who worm their way into households and captivate vulnerable women.
Yeah.
Who are weighed down with sins and led astray by various passions, who are always learning but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. And that made me think of the woke and how they're always like, do the work, and they're always learning. They're always reading the books, like they're always working on their whiteness. They're always learning. They're always.
Am I racist?
Yeah. Yes. And it's like they've been captivated by these, con artists who come into and prey upon vulnerable women who are looking for a belief system.
Well, they have to fill the void with something.
Well, I mean, look at how they prey on women. Reproductive health benefits, reproductive rights is what it's referred to. I mean, there's a massive attack on young women as far as that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw how people started to flip on abortion when a couple states passed a law that you had to show the potential mother a sonogram.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers immediately started flipping back to pro-life.
Because they're told the lie that it's a clump of cells. And once they soon realize that it is a human person and they see the visual, because very early on in pregnancy, the shape of a typical human being that we're used to seeing is made very clear.
Yep. And that's why the heartbeat bill has also been an overall good for us, because just having to hear the heartbeat has been enough for quite a few people to flip their positions.
Definitely.
It's amazing how they get women to oppose those things, because when I was in the woke world, I opposed those things. And I said, those things are, what I was told to say about them, which was those things are emotional manipulation. And the state doesn't have a right to force a woman to listen to the heartbeat or to look at a sonogram. But now on the other side of the issue, I'm like, it's hard for me to get back into the mindset I was in there then and understand how they were able to convince me of somehow it's so powerful. It's almost like they're admitting to the fact that it is a very powerful thing to see the picture of your baby.
It's a tool that undermines
to hear the heartbeat.
them.
Yeah.
Because it's about power.
Yeah.
It's all about power. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's sad to put it this way, but the child is the number one barrier to power for women. Because if one has a child, the chances of just going off on your own, being independent, we basically think about how deadbeat dads, awful men, right, can knock someone up and then just leave. And then it's like, oh, I'm fine because I have nothing to worry about. Obviously, there's more to it than just that. Whereas for a woman, if they're pregnant, they literally have someone from the very beginning of their life relying completely on them. And then once they're born, completely relying on them. And so they don't view that as a beautiful gift. They view it as a weight, as a shackle, essentially.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think, too, I would love to see the numbers on as far as single women, as far as Christians, because most single Christian women I know don't vote in that block.
I mean,
they don't vote with the
leftists. Single leftist white women. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we've got to, I feel like the church has more work to do as far as kind of keeping more women in the church, basically.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that song, All My Single Ladies. What is that song? Is that a Beyonce song?
Single ladies. Oh, the single ladies. That one.
I feel like Yeah, I feel like somebody needs to do just a really dark parody of that, about all the single ladies and all the darkness they get up to in the voting booth.
I would like to point out, though, that I break all barriers here. Okay, I am a white single woman who is PhD level educated and proudly voted for Trump for a third time. So, you know,
but still a
all the
Swiftie.
stereotypes.
I'd have to admit my father was texting his friends and he took a picture of the hat because he was with me when I got the hat. I could tell his fatherly his pride that his daughter, showing his male friends that his daughter bought the Trump hat. He was so proud.
It looks so good on you. We actually, in the chat, somebody said, One Punch Man Tolkien fan says, I gotta say, Michelle looks amazing in that MAGA hat.
Aw,
You
thank
do.
you.
It compliments you very well. Then we also had a super chat from Lex. Lex for $1.99. Thank you. Says, how many times do you vote? Great question. I made that joke at the polling place, and the first couple ladies who worked there did not laugh. But then I found a lady who laughed. I was like, so how many votes do I get? She's like, ha ha ha, just the one.
Until
some
you
of the
die,
people,
and then you vote multiple times.
right? Some of the people at these polling places are very serious, though. I think it's because obviously they're hopefully got their eyes peeled for shenanigans being played. Well, I am just a little, before you got here, Odin, I was telling them I'm a little jet lagged.
Mhm.
I'm a little, not as with it as usual. My mouth and my brain are not working so great. And if there's anything you guys wanted to cover, we wanted to keep this one a short one, but if there's anything you wanted to cover that we haven't covered,
Let me see.
I'm giving you all the floor.
I put something in the private chat that I found interesting that may at least spark a little the guy's thoughts and everything.
And then we could probably bring up a few scriptures that do possibly apply to political elections, even though our elections are different than what politics would have been back then.
Definitely. Or do you want me to do it? I probably could. Oh, you got it.
You want to read this one?
Yes. He says the church hasn't become political. Politics became spiritual when government decided to step past its due responsibility. Hold on, let me pull this up where I can see it. 1 second. Actually, you've got it up. Okay. Now if you go back up, I can read it now. I don't think I finished it. Yeah. Handing out driver's license, teaching math. He was saying that was what their responsibility was. And then now you can go back to 1 and 2 or the next one. Started to redefine marriage, gender, kill babies, unleash the IRS against the church. And if they spoke up, pull kids away from parents who don't support gender. I won't say that on this platform. Surgeries and put men and women's sports. This election's very important. Church, get out and vote, please. And I think he makes a good point. Like,
yes.
The time like to sit it out is gone. Like they made things. They went beyond what they were supposed to do and got into the spiritual arena. Again, like I'm saying, an AntiChrist spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's a great tweet. Like those are the times that we are in.
Yes.
That's why I almost find it when I find some people saying, like on Twitter or on X, you see these provocative people. Sometimes there's a woke pastor in Austin who I think is just full of crap and very provocative. And when they say this stuff about, there's no way you can be a Christian and vote for Trump. And I'm just like, are you blind? Like, are things upside down? Like we're in a world now where it has become commonplace to mutilate and sterilize children. Like our leaders are saying that's okay. We're under a mass delusion. And I have to vote against that, obviously.
Yeah. I do think that the movement and the culture is now going, though, in the opposite direction. All I can do is just look at how many people, whether it be in this election, the fact that you can honestly say, what world did we ever think that we would see Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and John F. Kennedy, of RFK Jr. on the same stage? Like, in what world could that actually happen? Then you add on to that people like Elon Musk. You add on to that people like Joe Rogan, who obviously is not supporting Trump, but is still kind of like, oh my gosh, this stuff is crazy. Because I think he ended up having Chloe Cole on his podcast to speak about, what she's been doing and just the insanity that is the whole trans ideology stuff. So it's like the fact that you have people that are starting to wake up, especially to that specific issue. The fact that you had in Virginia, the governor's election go the way that one did shows you that it's a very powerful and palatable issue. And so I do think that just as the Democrats are using abortion as their cudgel, I think that and I know that there's been some speculation that the unspoken silent majority position or the surprise position that could actually end up having a bigger impact than people realize is the trans thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's so much so that she doesn't seem to be talking about it a whole lot. Kamala.
No.
Being vocal about her support for it and the party's support for it. It's almost like they're starting to read the room.
Oh, that was one of those answers, Keri, when asked about it. She said, what's her new line? I will
follow the law.
I will uphold the law.
Uphold the law.
Oh yeah.
I will uphold the law is what she said about that issue.
Right. But at the same time, she's already said what she would do with laws.
Exactly.
I mean, I hesitate to even say this, but every election cycle we hear this is the most important election cycle of our lifetimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I actually believe them this time, because if they do get the Senate and the presidency, they've already pushed and already tried to get rid of the filibuster once.
Yeah.
They're already telling you what they're going to do. And I mean, it is stack the Supreme Court, abolish the Electoral College, undermine the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. And if they get their way and get the Senate, I mean, abolishing the filibuster takes us from being a republic essentially to being an actual democracy where it's mob rule.
Well, and beyond that, they've already expressed they want to give full amnesty to all these people. They are trying to change the electorate at every possible way.
Single payer health care,
Yes.
and codifying Roe versus Wade.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think people realize too. I mean, I remember like in college, he scared the heck out of me. We were in econ, I think it was econ 101. And he showed what happened, I believe it was in Venezuela at that time, and how just overnight there was that financial collapse. And
1,000,000% inflation.
yes. And it's just like, if we keep going on the current trajectory that that this administration has us on of spending money, don't think for a second that can't be us someday. I mean, eventually the fake money runs out. It is going to collapse if we do not turn the ship around really quickly.
Yeah.
The
You looked like you wanted to roll your eyes when I said it might be the most important.
Yeah, I'm a bit more black-pilled on that, I guess. Like, it's because same thing. I hear it every single time, and every single time it's like, we're fine. I disagree with my assessment in that, where it's like, oh, we're fine. I think, honestly, and this is where the black pill comes in, I think we are screwed either way. And let me explain. Because if Trump wins, I think that the left go completely insane.
The country burns.
And it's just violence and chaos. And in that way, we lose. And so it's like, again, that's where it's like, obviously, I look and see, I think there's a good moral argument to be made to support him as a person. But at the same time, it's like, is it really going to be the best outcome? Not because of anything he would do, but rather the reaction to him. I think it's like, I don't know if that would be good. Now, on the opposite side, you also then have the chance of, if Kamala wins, okay, I don't think you're going to have that same reaction from those on the right, because that's just not really how it works. But then if you start to push for things like packing the Supreme Court and all, pushing, eliminating the filibuster, I think you start to then break down the hesitations that people might have on the right to actually
for political
do something.
violence.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so it's like, in either case for me, I'm like, I think that this might be one of the last, quote unquote, civil elections that we have. Civil in just that it's not complete bedlam out in the streets on the night of voting and during the time up to voting. Like, it's not looking good, I think.
I agree with all of that too. Yeah.
I agree with all of that too. I'm on the same page, and people call it black pilled Odin, but I think it's also white pilled, because I know who controls. Like, I know who's in control and who sits on the throne. So all of that being said, it's like the Wendell Berry, I think it's a Wendell Berry poem. I've mentioned it a lot recently, where he says, basically be joyful, though you have considered all things. Though you've weighed and acknowledged all things that are possibly going to happen or
Yeah.
could
Well, and
possibly happen. And you still have that joy and that faith and that peace.
knowing who is in control, that gets us to at least one
Yes.
of the scriptures I had pulled for this. Paul addressing the Romans. This was about the Nero thing, Michelle, that you were talking about earlier. Romans 13:1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean he always gives you a great authority. I mean,
Mhm.
we vote
Right.
ourselves into bad authorities, and he lets you deal with the problems that sometimes you create.
That's
What
a
was the
great
other one I
scripture.
was pulling? So there was Jeremiah 29:4-7. This is when the Jews were basically put into exile, and Jeremiah wrote, "You have to seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare, or in that city's prosperity, that's where you will find your prosperity." So I mean, basically telling them, yeah, you have to pray for your leaders and your authority, and you have to take part in it.
It reminds
Because
me.
how it goes, you go.
Mhm.
Yep.
It reminds me of, I mentioned this last time, the novena prayer that I've been praying every day up to the election, and the phrase is, "Give grace to the citizens of this land, so that they will choose leaders according to the sacred heart of thy Son, that his glory may be manifest, lest we be given the leaders we deserve." And I think it's a great way of looking at it, because we sometimes think to ourselves, like, we deserve the best. It's like, no, as sinners, we actually really don't, right? It's only by God's grace that we receive anything that is good. And so if we are going to basically make decisions and choices that lead to our country going a certain direction and our culture going to a certain direction, well, then we deserve bad leaders, right? Because
Like
it's
like I said at the beginning, that's bad
yeah.
stewardship of what we were given.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Had one more, Proverbs 29. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people mourn. The king by judgment establishes the land, but he that receives gifts overthrows it. If a ruler listens to lies, all his servants are wicked.
Wow.
I tried to cherry pick some actual politic verses.
Well, there you go. I like them.
No, that's great. And the comments about, sometimes you get the consequences of your actions and the leaders
Yep.
that you deserve, and that's a harsh truth.
Yeah. And that's why, because I saw somebody also say that doesn't mean that we should give up if we don't feel like there's a good result either side. And that's why I definitely agree. Obviously, we should not ever give up hope, right? Hope is that which sustains us as Christians. But it also, I think, is also that reminder that we should always be very, very careful not to turn politicians into idols, not to turn people that we think are going to do really good things politically into things that we are worshiping, right? And that's why it's important to think, okay, what can I do in my own local life to try to improve my own local community, so that if things go to hell, we can start picking up the pieces, that we can start moving forward, that we can start building what we want our country to be, what we want our communities to be like. Because in all honesty, the ideal in my eyes is actually a bunch of just local communities all living in harmony with each other. That's what I think
Yes.
the
And
best course of
Thomas
action would be.
was
Comics
mentioning that earlier.
Mhm.
Thomas
Sounds
M.
like Comics Division got to Odin.
Oh, really?
Odin
No,
the
that's
prepper.
just subsidiarity, man. That's just like that Catholic view of like, no, we should have, basically that government should only be as big as is needed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and as small as possible, and as big as is needed.
You guys, I just want to read out this bit of good news. Knit Effery is here. Knit Effery,
Aw.
it's so good to see you. And she says, "Good
That
news,
name.
Keri."
time.
she laughs that I call her that. She says, "Good news, Keri. I'm going to read the Bible to learn about Christianity," which is amazing. And I'm really happy for you. And thank you for sharing that in the chat here. That's awesome. I don't know if I can say your name. I'll just keep calling you Knit Effery. I can't remember who's got what level of anonymity, but I know that that I'm a cheesy Christian. You know it, lady. So God loves you. That makes me so happy. I'm happy you're reading the good news.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can find so much peace in reading scripture in this time. I'm the only one on this panel. I'm really not black-pilled about. I'm really not. Like, yeah, they'll be crazy a little bit, but like, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'd rather be on the winning side than the losing side. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say. But
I just worry about in 2020 they were already boarding up all the major cities because of the chance that Trump won.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I don't think it'll be different this time because I think people have got. I mean, we're back on the Hitler thing today. I mean, come on.
yeah. I mean,
They're ridiculous about some of this stuff.
They can, but I think that's why they're already prepping with this bull crap of he's going to call in the military and stuff like that, because maybe that's what has to happen. Maybe that has to happen, and they just need to get tear gassed for a little bit, and then their little left-leaning butts can go back home. I mean, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I'm more worried that Biden and Harris with the DOD orders that came out last week that are basically telling law enforcement that yes, you are allowed to use lethal force on any kind of uprising that might happen around the election. Yeah.
Yeah, but not
and they
other way.
determine which way that goes. Yeah,
not the other way. There'll be riots, and they'll call it mostly peaceful. If
Yep.
Trump wins, there'll be riots, and they'll be burning cities down and killing people, and they'll say it's mostly peaceful, and they'll be trying to figure out how not to certify the election results. And we all know this, and it'll be the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yep.
If
And
it's
also
the other way.
the way you were wording that, Brahma, just made me think immediately of like the fact that this is happening on the 5th of November. And it's
Right.
like all it takes is that one shot.
Remember.
To get it all started, right? And so it's like if they're already talking about getting the police ready, shoot to kill, and it's like, one of them makes a mistake. It's like if you've got so much getting boiled up, it's not obviously like people are like saying, oh, it's civil war. It's like, no. I'm saying like just hot conflict. Like that doesn't have to be a national thing. It could be individual pockets of hot conflict. And that's what I, kind of have that fear of. And it's actually less so that and more so this video that's been going around of this woman going up to this guy's house and like yelling at him for having a Trump sign.
I saw
and
that.
It's like, if that's already happening
Yes.
in like a regular local community, what happens if the victory happens? If you've already now been brainwashed to think that this dude is the end of civilization, what does that mean for your neighbors in your local communities?
yeah.
I can think of no reason the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
There were people in our little town, like our little Texas suburb. 4 years ago, my pastor had a big Trump sign out on the side of his house. Well, people were stealing the sign, so then he got a sign that was like the size of his house. And then, but people would. I'm not telling you, like that video of that woman that I just saw, the one you're talking about, Odin. People would slow down their car, women, like as if they were possessed, and get out of the car and start screaming obscenities in front of his little children who are in the yard, like with no regard for how they were behaving in front of kids or anything. Just full of just like a demon.
Yeah.
But
You might just need to
this
rebuke the
hatred.
demon right then and there.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
In my city, there's these group of mostly like middle-aged women, but there's a couple of middle-aged men. And every Monday they quote protest on like this street corner. There's like 6 of them. And I never understand it. Like it has random generic signs like voting rights matter. But then they also have things like Earth is plan A, there is no plan B, and then get your hands off my uterus, and like all the typical things you would take. Like so at some point they have the random signs where it's like just generic like peace is important and voting matters, and I'm like, okay. And then they have the other ones where it's like, okay, you're clearly leftist. And it's like the worst that I've seen. For one, it's been me because I shake my head at them every time. I'm like, oh gosh, y'all again. Like y'all have a right to protest, but it's like, I'm still annoyed by it because y'all are ridiculous. But the worst I've seen is like truck in front of me one day, like a couple of years ago, like looked over at them and just did a thumbs down. It was just like, no, thank you. Whereas when I went to the March for Life that we had here in Chattanooga a few years ago, we were walking down the street and we had cars literally of people flipping us off, and we had high school kids. Young kids with us, flipping them off because they were holding.
It's like it's like a full-on possession of some kind. Yep. You can see it, that hatred, the animosity.
Yep.
We
promised Keri we would limit it to an hour tonight, and we're approaching that.
Just hit the hour.
It's about 2 a.m. here in Germany. I will just plug this. Really allow me to say this, and then you guys tell people where they can find you. My husband's whole band is here. And if you are in Germany or Switzerland, you can go to anthonygarciamusic.com and you can see a whole list of the cities. And it's going to be really special tour because it is the 4-piece band. And I hope to see you guys. I got to meet some folks last time we were out here. And that's that. Oh, and really quickly, somebody in the chat asked, my hat and this beautiful scarf were both knit by Tabitha from Cabot Cove Knits. So you can find her on Instagram. And this was part of a Blocked magazine thing. But if you're asking about, and there's also a pattern for this in Blocked. Anyway, that's for the knitters. That's for Knit Effery and you other ladies. There you go.
And I
Shout out to my knitters.
Can I share something on the screen? Now, I want to qualify this with, obviously, I pray, I mean that Kamala gets saved and, finds Jesus and gets her heart right. But you guys know this week, I guess some people shouted out that Christ
Jesus
is
Lord.
Jesus is Lord. And she said, you're at the wrong rally. Go to that small rally. It is funny. Again, I hope she gets saved, but it did make me laugh. I shared it if you want to put
It's a meme.
Saw that one. The campaign did immediately make her go to church the next day.
They did. They
Make
make her go to church. So that's good.
Pretty funny meme.
Well, church.
But yeah. But basically, I think we can all summarize this of get out and vote. Mm-hmm. Unless you're voting for Kamala, and then just go home. Rethink your life.
I don't agree with them, but at the same time, they have just as much, responsibility to vote their conscience. And I think that they probably need to have their conscience reformed. But, if they believe they're following their conscience, then that's me. I'm just I'm just
going to point out that conscience can be wrong. So follow what Scripture says.
That's why I said it's going to need to be reformed. They need to reform their conscience, but
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about that statement. If you want to vote for Kamala, just sit this one out, just make the world a better place.
We got some diversity on the panel here. Hashtag diversity.
But yeah, my final thoughts are, let's make America great again. And remember, we started last time, let's make America holy again. So There we go.
I love it. Yep. What about you, Brahma? What do you have coming up?
I'll be on Zax's channel in a couple hours, and we did get monetized finally. As of yesterday, I'm monetized, so I had my first monetized stream last night. So yeah, we'll be all set up for the election night stream, and you can catch me Saturday nights for Bourbon and Boarding talking hockey, and Sunday mornings we do the political show. So come check them out. Fantastic. And thank you for all you guys' help getting to the monetization level.
I'm so excited for you to start getting your videos demonetized and pulled down.
Oh yeah, I haven't made it to that monetization level. I'm just at the 500 subs, so I just get super chats and members.
There you go. Odin, what about you? What do you have coming up?
You can find me over at OMBReviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter /X. Just still covering box office stuff. I'll have my box office preview video out either tomorrow morning or Friday morning. And the last thing I would just say is, voting, it's not just a responsibility that we have. It is also, it's a moral responsibility as well. And in order for something to be moral, it has to be good. It has to be rooted in the good. And I think that it is up and it is incumbent upon us to make sure our morality is well-formed and aligns with the teachings of Jesus Christ. And I think that, even if we struggle to try to change the world around us, we should at the very least bring that truth in our own life. And the best way we can do that is by announcing Christ as King and living that out. What does it mean to have Christ as King in our house? What does it mean to have Christ as King in our world? We should start living like it.
I love that. Thank you for bringing it back to that about morality and where does your morality come from? And I'm a big believer. If you're on the fence, if you're just starting to read the Bible, like some, if you're just opening your mind to the possibility of God, I would ask you, are we humans, imperfect humans, the best arbiter of morality? because we're kind of fickle. We can change our we can justify almost anything. So that's
Yep.
one big point for Christianity is like, look, it comes from God. It's from an all-powerful creator outside of you. It's not from you.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
When are you back, Keri?
Oh man, I am back the day before the election. So
Okay.
yeah, we wanted to get back before in case things like Mr. Blackpill had said, things might go.
The airports are shut down. No,
things might go awry. So we'll be back, and yeah, I really love talking to you guys. Thanks for doing this with me, and thanks for helping me along tonight with a little bit of my jet lag. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully,
problem.
hopefully
It's
next
fun.
Christian panel we are celebrating.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
And well rested.
yes,
Yes.
that would be great. Well, thank you guys so much. If it was your first time tuning in, we do these every other week. We do it twice a month, and everyone's welcome in the chat. Non-believers as well. There's no dumb questions. We just ask that people try and be civil. And thank you for hanging out tonight. If you like it, please leave a comment or a like. And yeah, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Good
Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye. Oh, I don't have my video pulled up. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Everything.
The delayed goodbye.
Goodbye.